There is a quiet weight many people carry without ever naming it. It does not sit on the shoulders where others can see it. It does not leave bruises. It does not announce itself with noise. Yet it follows us into our mornings, sits beside us at our tables, and whispers into our nights. It is the weight of expectation. The expectation that people will understand us. The expectation that life will unfold according to our plans. The expectation that our kindness will always be returned, that our efforts will always be rewarded, that our dreams will arrive exactly when we desire them to. And so we wait. We wait for the perfect response, the perfect opportunity, the perfect recognition. We wait for life to match the picture we have painted in our minds. But while we are waiting, something precious slips through our fingers. Peace. The kind of peace that does not depend on circumstances. The kind of peace that does not ask permission from the world before entering the heart. Many of us have been taught to hold tightly to outcomes, hold tightly to people, hold tightly to the stories we tell ourselves about how things should be. Yet the tighter we grip, the more anxious we become. The more we insist that life follow our script, the more we suffer when it chooses a different path. What if the struggle is not in life itself? What if the struggle is in our refusal to release what was never ours to control? There is wisdom in the river that does not argue with the stones in its way. There is wisdom in the tree that does not demand spring during winter. Nature understands something we often forget. Peace is found not in forcing, but in allowing, not in controlling every chapter, but in trusting that the story can still be beautiful even when it surprises us. Today, I invite you to explore a different way of living, a way that is lighter, quieter, and infinitely more freeing, a way where your happiness is not chained to outcomes, and your spirit is not held hostage by the opinions of others. Because true inner peace begins the moment you loosen your grip on what must happen and open your heart to what is happening. And when expectations no longer rule your life, you may discover that peace was never far away. It was waiting patiently beneath the noise, ready to welcome you home. One of the greatest obstacles to inner peace is a burden that many people carry without even realizing it. It is not a physical burden, yet it can exhaust the mind, drain the spirit, and cloud even the brightest moments of life. This burden is expectation. From a young age, people learn to create pictures of how life should unfold. They imagine how others should treat them, how success should arrive, how relationships should grow, and how the future should look. These expectations often appear harmless at first. They seem like signs of hope, ambition, or optimism. But when they become rigid, they begin to transform into invisible chains that bind happiness to specific outcomes. The hidden danger of expectations is that they convince us that peace exists somewhere in the future, waiting for a particular event to happen. We tell ourselves that we will finally be calm when we receive recognition, when someone apologizes, when a relationship improves, when a goal is achieved, or when life becomes easier. In doing so, we place our emotional well-being in the hands of circumstances we cannot fully control. Every day becomes a silent negotiation with reality. Instead of accepting life as it is, we constantly compare it to the version we imagined. Whenever reality fails to match our expectations, disappointment enters, many people suffer not because life is unbearable, but because life refuses to follow the script they have written for it. They expect loyalty and encounter betrayal. They expect understanding and face misunderstanding. They expect certainty and discover unpredictability. The pain that follows is often intensified by the belief that things should have happened differently. The mind becomes trapped between what is and what should be. It replays conversations, questions decisions, and searches endlessly for explanations. This inner struggle consumes energy that could otherwise be used to experience the present moment. Expectations also create unnecessary pressure. They turn simple experiences into tests that must be passed. A conversation becomes valuable only if it leads somewhere. An effort becomes meaningful only if it produces immediate results. A day becomes successful only if everything unfolds according to plan. Under such conditions, peace becomes fragile because it depends on constant validation from the outside world. The moment something unexpected occurs, tranquility is disturbed. What makes this burden especially difficult is that it often disguises itself as responsibility or wisdom. People believe they are protecting themselves by planning every detail and anticipating every outcome. Yet life remains larger than any plan. No amount of preparation can guarantee how people will behave, how circumstances will change, or what challenges may arise. The attempt to control every possibility eventually leads to frustration because reality cannot be managed with complete precision. The more tightly a person clings to expectations, the heavier life feels. Every unmet expectation becomes another weight added to the heart. Every disappointment becomes evidence that life is not cooperating. Over time, this accumulation of unmet desires can create bitterness, anxiety, and exhaustion. The mind becomes crowded with demands placed upon the world, upon other people, and upon oneself. Instead of experiencing freedom, a person lives under the constant strain of wanting reality to be different from what it is. There is a profound difference between living freely and living for approval, yet many people spend years without recognizing the distinction. From childhood, individuals are often taught to seek validation. They learn to measure their worth through praise, acceptance, achievements, and the reactions of others. While appreciation and encouragement can be valuable, a quiet danger emerges when a person's sense of peace becomes dependent on external approval. The moment happiness is tied to how others respond, freedom begins to disappear. Living for approval means constantly looking outward for confirmation that one is enough. Every decision becomes influenced by the possibility of acceptance or rejection. A person may choose a career to impress others rather than fulfill a genuine passion. They may remain silent about their beliefs to avoid criticism. They may shape their personality, appearance, and even dreams around what is expected of them. Over time, they become strangers to themselves. They know what others want from them, but they struggle to understand what they truly want for themselves. This pursuit of approval is exhausting because the standards of others are constantly changing. One group may admire a certain quality while another dismisses it. One person may celebrate a choice while someone else criticizes it. Trying to satisfy everyone becomes an impossible task. Yet many continue the pursuit, believing that peace will arrive once they receive enough recognition, enough admiration, or enough acceptance. What they often discover is that approval provides only temporary comfort. It fades quickly and demands continuous renewal. The need for validation becomes a cycle that can never be completely satisfied. Living freely is different. It does not mean ignoring others or refusing to learn from constructive feedback. Rather, it means understanding that self-worth does not depend on public opinion. A free person listens to advice without becoming imprisoned by it. They value relationships without surrendering their identity. They appreciate encouragement without making it the foundation of their confidence. Their choices are guided by values, purpose, and self-awareness rather than by the fear of judgment. Freedom begins when a person realizes that not everyone will understand their journey. Some people will disagree with their decisions. Others may misinterpret their intentions. There will always be those who project their fears, expectations, and limitations onto someone else's life. When approval is the goal, these reactions become sources of anxiety. But when authenticity becomes the goal, such reactions lose much of their power. The opinions of others may still be heard, but they no longer determine emotional stability. One of the greatest gifts of living freely is the ability to experience peace in the present moment. Instead of constantly performing for an audience, a person can simply exist as they are. They no longer waste energy maintaining masks or chasing impossible standards. Their relationships become more genuine because they are built on honesty rather than performance. Their successes become more meaningful because they arise from personal conviction rather than external pressure. The path toward freedom often requires courage. It asks a person to disappoint expectations, to embrace uncertainty, and to trust their inner voice even when it stands apart from the crowd. Yet within that courage lies a remarkable sense of relief. The burden of constantly proving oneself begins to fade. The need for endless validation grows quieter. What remains is a deeper connection to one's true self, a steadier sense of worth, and a life shaped by authenticity rather than applause. Disappointment is a feeling that touches every human life. No matter how careful, intelligent, or prepared a person may be, there will always be moments when reality unfolds differently than expected. What many people fail to recognize, however, is that disappointment often does not come directly from events themselves. Instead, it grows from the stories, assumptions, and imagined outcomes created long before those events ever occur. The mind has a remarkable ability to travel ahead of reality, constructing detailed visions of how situations should unfold. These visions can feel so convincing that they become emotional investments. And when reality takes a different path, the gap between expectation and actuality becomes the source of pain. Consider how often people create silent expectations without even realizing it. They expect a friend to respond in a certain way. They expect their efforts to receive immediate recognition. They expect a relationship to develop according to a particular timeline. They expect opportunities to arrive because they have worked hard. None of these expectations are spoken aloud, yet they become deeply rooted within the mind. When events fail to align with these internal predictions, disappointment emerges. The emotional reaction is not always caused by what happened, but by the contrast between reality and the imagined version that existed beforehand. The human mind naturally seeks certainty. It wants to know what comes next, how situations will end, and whether desires will be fulfilled. To satisfy this need, people often create mental scripts. They rehearse future conversations, predict outcomes, and imagine ideal scenarios. While imagination can inspire hope and motivation, it can also create attachments to outcomes that are beyond personal control. The more detailed and emotionally charged these imagined futures become, the greater the potential for disappointment when life chooses a different direction. One reason disappointment feels so painful is that people often mistake their expectations for promises. They convince themselves that because something seems fair, logical, or deserved, it should happen. They begin to view their preferred outcome as inevitable rather than possible. When reality fails to cooperate, they experience not only sadness, but also confusion and resentment. They question why life did not reward their efforts or fulfill their hopes. Yet life does not operate according to personal expectations. It moves through countless variables, circumstances, and influences that no individual can completely control. This does not mean people should abandon dreams, goals, or aspirations. Hope remains an important part of human growth. The difference lies in how one relates to desired outcomes. A healthy approach allows room for possibility while accepting uncertainty. It recognizes that effort can be controlled, but results cannot always be guaranteed. It understands that people can act with sincerity without controlling how others respond. It embraces the idea that meaningful opportunities may arrive in forms that were never anticipated. When individuals become less attached to imagined outcomes, they create space for greater resilience. Unexpected events no longer feel like personal betrayals. Changes in direction become opportunities for learning rather than evidence of failure. Reality is allowed to reveal itself without constantly being measured against a preconceived script. The mind becomes more flexible, more adaptable, and more open to experiences that fall outside its original plans. Much of the suffering associated with disappointment comes from resisting what is rather than accepting what has occurred. The mind continues to replay alternative scenarios, imagining how things should have unfolded differently. It clings to possibilities that no longer exist and struggles against circumstances that cannot be changed. In doing so, it prolongs its own distress and remains trapped within the shadow of imagined outcomes. One of the most transformative lessons a person can learn is the ability to accept life as it unfolds. Acceptance is often misunderstood. Many believe it means giving up, settling for less, or becoming passive in the face of challenges. In reality, acceptance is neither weakness nor resignation. It is the courageous decision to face reality without resistance. It is the willingness to see things as they are rather than as we wish them to be. Through acceptance, a person stops fighting battles against circumstances that have already occurred and begins to reclaim the energy that was once lost to frustration, denial, and regret. Life has never promised certainty, Every day contains elements beyond human control. People change, plans shift, opportunities appear and disappear. Unexpected challenges emerge without warning. Yet many individuals spend a large portion of their lives resisting these realities. They argue with the past, complain about the present, and fear the future. They continuously ask why things happened the way they did, instead of focusing on what can be done now. This resistance creates emotional turbulence. The more someone insists that reality should be different, the more suffering they experience. Acceptance begins with acknowledging a simple truth. Reality does not require permission to exist. Whether a person likes a situation or not, it remains what it is. Denying it does not change it. Fighting it mentally does not erase it. Refusing to acknowledge it only prolongs emotional pain. The moment someone accepts what has happened, they create the possibility of moving forward. Acceptance does not mean approving of every circumstance. It simply means recognizing it clearly and honestly. There is remarkable strength in this approach. When a person accepts reality, they stop wasting energy on what cannot be changed. Instead, they direct their attention toward what remains within their influence. They begin asking more productive questions. Rather than asking why something happened, they ask how they can respond. Rather than dwelling on what was lost, they focus on what can still be built. This shift transforms obstacles into opportunities for growth. Acceptance also allows people to release the burden of perfection. Many suffer because they expect life to follow a flawless path. They believe success should come without setbacks, relationships should remain free of conflict, and personal growth should happen without mistakes. When reality inevitably falls short of these ideals, disappointment follows. Acceptance reminds us that imperfection is not evidence of failure. It is part of the human experience. Mistakes, delays, losses, and uncertainties are not interruptions to life. They are life. Nature offers countless examples of this wisdom. Seasons change without resistance. Rivers alter their course when obstacles appear. Trees bend during storms rather than demanding calm skies. The natural world does not waste energy arguing with what exists. It adapts, adjusts, and continues forward. Human beings possess the same capacity, yet they often forget it. They become attached to specific outcomes and struggle whenever reality diverges from their expectations. When acceptance becomes a daily practice, inner peace begins to grow. The mind becomes less consumed by battles it cannot win. Emotional reactions lose some of their intensity because reality is no longer viewed as an enemy. Unexpected changes become easier to navigate. Difficult moments still hurt, but they no longer define a person's entire outlook. Acceptance creates space for patience, clarity, and wisdom. It allows individuals to trust that they can face whatever comes next, even when the path ahead remains uncertain and unseen. Inner peace is often imagined as something distant, something that arrives only after life becomes easier, calmer, or more predictable. Yet in truth, it is not found at the end of perfect circumstances. It is found in the quiet shift of perception. In the moment a person stops trying to control everything and begins to trust the unfolding of life itself. This is where surrender becomes powerful. Not surrender as defeat, but surrender as understanding. The understanding that not everything needs to be forced, and not everything needs to be held with clenched certainty. Human beings naturally try to secure life. They plan, they calculate, they anticipate, believing that enough preparation can remove uncertainty. But life remains fluid, constantly changing in ways no single mind can fully predict. When a person resists this fluidity, tension is born. The mind becomes heavy with the need to control outcomes, people, and timing. This tension slowly accumulates, even in small daily moments, until peace feels distant and difficult to reach. Surrender offers another way. It invites the mind to loosen its grip and to stop treating uncertainty as an enemy. Trust plays a vital role in this process. Trust does not mean ignoring reality or pretending that challenges do not exist. It means believing that life can hold complexity without collapsing into chaos. It means recognizing that even when things do not go according to plan, there is still movement, still possibility, still a path forward that may not yet be visible. Trust allows a person to breathe more deeply into the present moment, instead of constantly trying to escape it or reshape it. Self-awareness strengthens this trust. When a person becomes aware of their thoughts, emotions, and patterns of expectation, they begin to see how much internal struggle is created not by events themselves, but by resistance to those events. They notice how quickly the mind builds stories about what should have happened, how things should be different, or how life is unfair for not meeting certain conditions. Through awareness, these patterns lose some of their power. The person begins to observe their reactions rather than being completely controlled by them. As surrender, trust, and self-awareness come together, something subtle but profound begins to change. The constant pressure to fix every outcome starts to dissolve. The mind becomes less reactive to uncertainty. Moments that once triggered anxiety or frustration begin to feel more manageable. This does not mean difficulties disappear. It means the relationship with difficulties changes. Instead of being overwhelmed by them, a person learns to move with them. Inner peace grows in this space. It is not loud or dramatic. It does not depend on external validation or perfect conditions. It is quiet, steady, and deeply personal. It exists in the ability to remain grounded even when life does not follow expectation. It exists in the willingness to let go of constant control and to accept that some things unfold in their own timing and their own way. Over time, this way of living reshapes how a person experiences everything. Moments become lighter because they are no longer weighed down by rigid demands. Relationships feel more authentic because they are not burdened by constant expectation. Decisions become clearer because they are guided by presence rather than fear of future outcomes. Even uncertainty begins to feel less threatening because it is no longer seen as something to fight against, but something to move through.